All right, Frisco, we are very fortunate today to have a very special guest with us, none other than Casey from Casey and the Sunshine Band. Casey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How's everything?
Everything is going great. We're looking forward to having you in Frisco very soon. So how's the tour going so far?
Well, it's always going great. I mean, I do mostly weekends, so I'm looking forward to coming to Frisco. I don't think I've ever been to actually Frisco, and coming, with the band and having a good time with everyone.
Well, very good. So for everybody listening to us, Casey and the Sunshine Band are going to be here at Comerica Center on November the 2nd. So that's coming up very quickly. Be sure to go out and get your tickets for that. But Casey, while we have you, I wanted to just kind of get a little bit more about you and some of the background on the band. And the first question I have is, how did you come up with the name The Sunshine Band?
My last name is Casey, and I worked in a record store, and the prefix for Columbia Records at the time was a K and a C. And so when coming up for the name, there was no band. It was just me, really. So I had been to a wedding, and I saw this Junkanoo band, and so I made this record, and I thought, well, I'll just call it KC, and the Sunshine Band from the state of Florida. And it was actually Casey and the Sunshine Junkanoo Band, what I called it. And I dropped the Junkanoo after the second record because it was kind of just too long to go on playlist and everything like that.
Totally makes sense. So, and when did you actually form the band?
The day I put out the first record, actually. I mean, you have to understand that there was really no band. It was just studio musicians that I used and hired to play on the records. And all of a sudden I start becoming successful with this name, and there's no band. So eventually, after the second album or whatever, after Get Down Tonight, or those started happening, I just went to some of the guys who were playing on the record and asked, would you be part of, go out as Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Oh, very good. And in terms of the music you write, it's a lot of fun. It's very danceable. What were some of the early influences for you in the stylistically, the type of music that you've been putting out?
Well, I've always listened to all kinds of music. My mother loved music. My mother loved more R&B music. My father could care less about any kind of music, I think. I mean, he enjoyed it, but I don't think he ever bought a radio or anything in his life. Which is not a bad thing. My father was the most amazing person ever. I don't want to downplay my father as being some bad person. But so I grew up listening to that. I grew up in the gospel church, and so I gravitated more towards R&B music. The great and the Motown sound. Definitely a lot of the Motown sound, and the great Aretha Franklin stuff with all the horns and the Stax stuff with Sam and Dave, and Johnny Taylor, and then all the Atlantic stuff with Wilson Pickett, and just all that great R&B music of the time. And then came James Brown, of course, James Brown. And then later on, it was like Joe Cocker and the Englishmen. I just, that whole scene. And then there was Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So it just kind of grabbed, from what I think I was influenced by a little bit of everybody, but probably more by Motown than anyone, I would think.
Totally makes sense. And there's certainly a lot of that reflected, I think, in the music that we hear. Knowing that we were going to have a chance to chat a little bit today, I've been going back and listening to a lot more of the old songs, and you can certainly hear that Motown influence in that. Another interesting aspect of your music to me has been the longevity. You've written songs that people still love to listen to, still love to go out and dance to, and have a good time when Casey and the Sunshine Band comes on. What would you attribute to that longevity? How did you pull that off, if you will?
Evidently they were great songs. They were critics destroyed them all the time. I mean, we were always put down by the critics. I got to a point where I just wouldn't even read anything, any critic, any review that was written about us or anything about the music. There was just this constant backlash against it and that sort of thing. And I guess it's proven, it's outstood the test of time, and it's proven that there's some substance to it, evidently, because it's in over 250 movies and TV commercials and every sporting event and everywhere you go, every party, that wedding and bar mitzvah and everything else. It's there. So I guess they weren't so bad after all.
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of some of the critics and their criticisms. Anyways, I think the true test is how the fans have reacted
Right.
and the longevity.
Well, I had to ignore what the critics wrote because every critic has their own. It seemed like back then, I mean, most critics were rock and roll, from the rock and roll era or whatever. So you could always tell what their influences were because you would see all these great reviews of this rock stuff, and they'd get to something R&B or something like us and just destroy it. It's like, they were being so partial, and it was so evident, blatantly, like right in your face, how partial they were being.
Do you think that was just kind of part of the time when you guys were coming about and becoming more famous? Was it a transition in music?
I think it had a lot to do with part of the times. I think our music was threatening to a lot of different genres and a lot of different people for some reason. Just like when Elvis came in, his music was threatening, and the Beatles' music was threatening to everyone. And I think we really was the same way with us, really, if you think about it. I mean, we did change the sound of music. We did change, we ushered in this whole dance thing or whatever, and it was our upbeat that just created this whole movement that was sort of there, but we were the fire that ignited it. You know what I mean? And I kind of lost my train of thought, but
no, that's
we were
okay.
So in a sense, we became very threatening. That sound, that whole thing that was starting to happen, became very threatening to other artists of other genres because people were gravitating toward this whole new sound and idea of music and everything.
Well, we're very grateful that you did not listen to the critics and that you kept being true to yourself and left us with all the music.
Well, I am too. I mean, I never have really listened to people. If I would have done that, I never would have made it at all because I was told I was white and I would never make it in an R&B world. So, it was kind of crazy that there was these type of prejudicial ideas that if you're white, you can't sound black, and if you're black, you can't sound white, and if you're country, you can't sound not country, and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, cheers to proving them wrong.
Yeah. You know what? I do what I do. And what I do is just natural that comes to me. I don't imitate anyone. I've never imitated anything. I just do what is Casey, and that's who I am. And, I was even afraid to study music because I was afraid it would take away any natural sounds that I had or it would make me part of the machine. I was always afraid of being a part of this machine that they all want us to be a part of. And I was afraid if I became too much part of that machine that I would not have my own identity.
So coming up with the show now, you're going to be playing in Frisco again on November 2nd. What should people be looking forward to? What kind of experience are they going to get when they come out to the show? Well,
our shows, there's 15 people on stage, including the dancers and everyone. And everyone, I like everyone to participate. There's times when one of the singers will kind of do some of the talking to the audience, and I just kind of take a little step back. I want everybody to be a part of the show, and everyone is a part of the show. It's I'm not sure how long our show is going to be that night, but it all depends. But it's all the hits and then some, and I've been throwing bits and pieces of other songs from the albums into the show. I've always wanted to keep it familiar to everyone that comes. So I try not to have too much kind of filler, and some of the filler I do use would be like a song from the 70s or something like that, just to keep it more familiar with the entire audience instead of just, the true, of course, the true KCSB fans. That's very important. But I want everybody to be able to connect. So.
Well, and I think they will, and I think you're going to find a very welcoming and warm audience in Frisco. We're very much looking forward to having you here. Well,
I've always loved that area. How far are you from Dallas?
So Frisco is about 20, 30 minutes north of Dallas, kind of depending.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a northern
I remember,
suburb. But...
Right. No, I know how warm. I remember when we first released Shake Your Booty, I think it was at Six Flags over Texas, that I first debuted that song to a crowd, and I wasn't sure it would be a hit record. And we did the song, and the crowd went crazy, and that just confirmed that I was wrong on that one. I was right on all the other ones, but I was a little skeptical about Shake Your Booty for some reason. But it was in that area of Texas that I first debuted that song live. So there's a lot of fond memories there. So
good. That's a good little bit of trivia, something for us to think about as people are coming out to the show. So
exactly.
Thank you again. Well, listen, I know you've got a very packed schedule, and we've only got a few minutes.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate taking your time out of the day to have me on.
Yeah, you bet. And again, everybody in Frisco, look forward to having Casey and the Sunshine Band here in Frisco, Texas on November 2nd. Casey, thanks again.
Thank you.